Alien girl felt her heartbeat sync with the human. A mistake, she said. Yet she stayed close. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Ethan Cole, as the storm outside the observation array pressed against the reinforced glass like a living thing. The entire structure hummed under the strain, metal ribs creaking as gusts of electrically charged dust scraped the outer hull. Ethan braced himself against the trembling walkway, his breath forming a thin fog inside his helmet. A soft flicker pulsed on his wrist display, an irregular heartbeat signature, faint but steady, threading into his own bio readings through the rescue scanner. He paused. The signal wasn't mechanical interference. It felt rhythmic, organic, almost searching. He followed it down a dim maintenance corridor lit only by emergency strips glowing a cold blue. Dust drifted in the air like slow-moving stars. With every step, the foreign heartbeat ghosted across his sensors, syncing for a split second with his own before slipping away again. Hang on. I hear you. He whispered, though no one could hear him. A collapsed support beam blocked the path ahead. Something, a soft exhale, quick and shaky, came from beneath it. Ethan dropped to one knee, bracing his shoulder against the bent metal. I've got you. Just stay still. The panel lifted inch by inch, enough for him to see her. She was curled against the wall, her skin a pale blue glow like moonlight on water, her breathing shallow. Silver-violet eyes blinked up at him, dazed but alert. She wasn't human. And she wasn't safe. A shower of dust rained down as the structure groaned again. Ethan slid an arm beneath her shoulders. Careful, steady. You're hurt. We need to move. The moment his glove brushed her arm, his scanner spiked. Her heartbeat surged into his readings, then locked in. A perfect sync. Her eyes widened as if she felt it too. No, she whispered, her voice rough but melodic. That was a mistake. It shouldn't happen. Even. As she said it, she didn't pull away. She leaned slightly toward him, as though the contact steadied her more than it frightened her. Ethan adjusted his grip, lifting her free of the fallen beam. She was lighter than he expected, warm despite the failing heat systems. The synced pulse fluttered again, gentle but insistent, echoing down his arm. We'll talk about it later, he said softly. Right now, let's get you out of here. Another tremor rippled underfoot. The lights flickered. He held her closer without thinking, shielding her from the falling dust. She didn't protest. Instead, her hand curled weakly into the fabric of his suit, just enough to tell him she wasn't ready to be let go. And despite the alarm klaxons, despite the failing station, despite her calling it a mistake, she stayed close. The hallway trembled again as Ethan carried Kayla toward the isolation chamber, her faint glow reflecting off the metal walls like ripples of underwater light. The synced heartbeat echoed softly through his wrist display, steady but fragile, almost as if her pulse leaned on his to find its rhythm. Kayla's fingers tightened briefly on his suit, not out of fear, he realized, but to make sure the connection did not slip away. She looked up at him, her breath shallow yet calmer than before, the violet shimmer in her eyes flickering each time the station groaned. This connection, it should not have happened, she murmured, her voice fragile, as though she was speaking more to herself than to him. My people do not bond through contact. This is something else. Ethan angled his helmet light toward her face, keeping his steps steady despite the shifting floor beneath them. Whatever it is keeping you stable. Let us focus on that. She blinked slowly, as if trying to process his certainty, then rested her forehead lightly against his shoulder for a brief moment. A gesture so quiet and unplanned that Ethan felt his breath catch. The emergency hatch leading to the isolation pod had jammed halfway. Its motor clicked uselessly, a tired mechanical sigh. Ethan adjusted Kayla in his arms. Hold on for a second. She nodded, leaning into the wall for support. Ethan gripped the edge of the hatch and forced it wider just enough for them to slip through. A soft hum activated as the pod recognized life signs, sealing behind. Then with a gentle thud, inside, the light shifted to a warm amber that softened the metallic edges. Kayla exhaled as though the warmth seeped into her bones. Ethan eased her onto the padded bench. The moment his hand slipped away, the sync pulse on his display fluttered erratically. Kayla's gaze shot up to him, her expression unreadable. "It reacts to distance," she whispered. "I did not think such a thing was real." Ethan sat beside her, not touching, but close enough that the heartbeats on the scanner steadied into harmony again. Her shoulders relaxed, just barely. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. It feels familiar. As if something ancient woke up inside me." Her voice trembled, then steadied. "But it cannot mean what it appears to mean. Humans and my kind are not meant to align this way." A soft vibration rolled through the pod as the stabilization field engaged, filtering out the tremors from the rest of the station. The sudden quiet wrapped around them like a blanket. Ethan watched her study the space between them, her eyes tracing the inches that kept them apart, yet felt strangely small. "Earlier," he said gently, "you stayed close even when you could have pulled away." Kayla looked down at her hands, blue light pooling gently across her palms. "I stayed because the feeling frightened me, and because it did not feel wrong." The admission hung in the small chamber like suspended breath. She looked up again, meeting his eyes fully, without hesitation this time. "Ethan, what happens if this connection does not fade?" He held her gaze, steady and warm. "Then we face it together. Whatever it is." Her chest rose in a soft, uneven inhale. The synced heartbeat shimmered once more across the display, brighter now, steadier, as if answering on its own. Outside, the storm battered the station, but inside the small isolation pod, Kayla leaned just slightly closer, not enough to break protocol, but enough that their breaths touched the same space. And for the first time since the collapse, she did not call it a mistake. The isolation pod settled into a steady hum, its amber lights warming the air while the storm outside continued to press against the station like a distant heartbeat of its own. Ethan checked the environmental panel, making sure the atmosphere mix would help Kayla recover. She watched him quietly, her expression softening each time the synced pulse steadied across his wrist display. When he turned back toward her, she was studying the small glow tracing along her forearm, a rhythm that rose and fell in time with his own. "It is still there," she whispered, almost in wonder. "I thought it might fade once I rested." Ethan lowered himself onto the bench beside her, close enough for her to feel his presence, but not crowding her. "Maybe it is not supposed to fade," he said gently. "Maybe it is just responding to stress." Kayla tilted her head, her silver hair shifting like liquid light. "My species does not have stress responses that reach outward. Our biology focuses inward when threatened. But this," she pressed her hand lightly to her chest, then glanced at the scanner on his wrist. "This feels as if part of me is reaching for you." Her voice trembled at the thought, not with fear, but with uncertainty. Another gentle vibration rippled beneath them as the station's stabilizers recalibrated. The pod lights flickered once before settling again. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to offer calm through the steadiness of his breathing. "Kayla, whatever is happening, you are not facing it alone. I am right here." She looked at him as if trying to interpret a language she did not fully know. "Your people. You choose closeness," she said softly. "You choose who you trust. Mine do not. We distance ourselves until everything is proven safe. Even then, our connections remain quiet and formal." Ethan offered a small, reassuring smile. "Then I guess I am breaking a few cultural patterns for you." Her eyes brightened slightly at his tone. "You make it sound easy." "It does not have to be difficult," he replied. "Not if we take it one moment at a time." Kayla hesitated, then shifted just a little closer, her shoulder brushing the air between them without actually touching. Even the slight movement made the synced pulse shimmer stronger across the scanner. She noticed it immediately. "Each time I am near you, it grows clearer," she murmured. "It feels like a signal I am not trained to understand." Ethan breathed slowly, letting the silence wrap around them like a gentle blanket. "Then we figure it out together. No rush. No pressure." She studied his face for a long, quiet moment, the amber light catching the soft blue glow of her skin. "When you carried me here," she said carefully, "I felt something. Not just survival. Something steady. As if your heartbeat knew the way even when I did not." Ethan's voice softened. "I was not guiding you. I was just making sure you were safe." Kayla lowered her gaze. her fingers curling slightly into her lap. Safety is not something I have understood well. Not until now. The pod lights dimmed gently as the system entered low-power mode, wrapping the space in a softer glow. Outside, the storm deepened into a distant roar, but inside, the air felt warm, calm, almost like a sanctuary. Kayla's voice dropped to a faint whisper. Ethan, if this connection remains, it may change things between us. He met her eyes, steady and warm. Only if you want it to. She exhaled, a slow, fragile breath that seemed to release something she had held for far too long. The synced pulse glowed again, steady as a promise. And for the first time, she did not look away. The isolation pod lights glowed softly as the storm outside began to fade into a distant rumble, leaving behind a quieter tremor that felt almost like the station was exhaling. Ethan checked the structural readings on the wall display, relieved to see the pressure level stabilizing. Kayla watched him with calm, steady eyes, her breathing more even now, the gentle shimmer of her pulse still tracing along her forearm as if it was quietly listening to his. When Ethan sat beside her again, she tilted her head slightly, noticing how the synced heartbeat on his wrist settled into a smooth, steady line. It is calmer, she whispered, as if it knows the danger has passed. Ethan kept his voice low, mindful of how sound seemed to travel more intimately inside the pod. Maybe it responds to what you feel. Kayla considered that, her gaze drifting to the scanner on his wrist. My people believe our bodies are governed by logic and regulation. Reactions that occur without conscious control are rare. But this, her voice softened. This feels like something older than logic. A gentle vibration hummed through the bench as the station's filters recalibrated, sending a faint warmth through the floor. Kayla closed her eyes for a moment, her shoulders relaxing as if the warmth soothed the tension that had built up inside her. Ethan watched her quietly, giving her the space to steady herself. "How is your breathing?" he asked. She opened her eyes again, meeting his. "Better. The air here feels safe." She paused, then added more quietly, "You feel safe." The words lingered in the dim light, gentle and honest. Ethan let them settle before responding. "I am glad you feel that way." Kayla shifted slightly, turning toward him. "When the beam collapsed earlier, I expected isolation. My instincts always prepare for separation when danger comes. But then you appeared, and the connection happened, and suddenly I did not feel alone." Her gaze dropped briefly to her hands. "That scared me more than the falling debris." Ethan's tone remained steady, grounding. "It is natural to be unsure when something new happens." She nodded slowly. "But uncertainty is not what troubles me. It is the ease with which I accepted your presence. I have never adjusted to someone so quickly." The pod lights dimmed and brightened as the environmental cycle shifted, casting a gentle halo around her silhouette. Ethan leaned forward slightly, keeping his voice soft. "Kayla, you do not need to force meaning onto this right now. Whatever this is, it can unfold at its own pace." Kayla breathed out slowly, her chest rising in a smooth, measured rhythm. Then her attention drifted toward the sealed hatch as a faint chime echoed through the pod. It was the system alert indicating partial atmospheric recovery outside. The station was becoming safe again. "The others will be returning to their posts soon," she murmured. "They will want reports. Explanations." Her eyes met his, searching. "And I will be expected to distance myself. That is how my people maintain order." Ethan's reply came quietly, almost like a promise. "You can decide your own distance." Kayla blinked, surprised by the simplicity of it. "You say that as if it is a choice I am allowed to make." "It is," Ethan said gently. "At least with me." A soft glow pulsed along her forearm again, the synced heartbeat shining brighter for a moment before settling. Kayla drew in a slow breath, steady and warm. She did not move closer, but she did not move away either. In the gentle hum of the isolaton pod, with the storm fading and the station finding its balance again, she let the silence answer for her. And the synced pulse, quiet and sure, answered along with it. The isolation pod released a soft chime, signaling that the outer corridors were regaining stability. A faint wash of cleaner air drifted in through the vents, carrying a subtle warmth that eased the metallic chill lingering in the room. Kayla lifted her gaze toward the ceiling as if listening to something distant, her expression calm, but threaded with uncertainty. Ethan watched her quietly, noting the way her pulse shimmered faintly beneath her skin, still responding to his presence with a steady echo on his wrist display. "You hear something," he said gently. Kayla nodded. "The station is returning to normal. The crews will check in soon. They will expect me to behave as they expect one of my people to behave." She paused, her voice growing quieter. Reserved. Composed. Separate. Ethan leaned back slightly, giving her space while still staying close enough for the connection to remain steady. Being composed does not mean shutting yourself away. Kayla's eyes softened. For us, it does. We guard our inner world so carefully that anything unplanned feels like a breach. She studied the glow along her forearm. And this connection was not planned. Ethan let the moment settle before he spoke. Then maybe it is not a breach. Maybe it is a bridge. Kayla looked at him with a puzzled sincerity. You speak as if trust is built in an instant. No, he replied, keeping his tone warm and even. It is built little by little. And you have given me no reason not to trust you. Her breath caught slightly, not in alarm, but in something gentler. The pod lights shifted to a soft daylight tone, signaling the end of emergency isolation mode. The hatch lights flickered to life in a muted blue. The pod was ready to open. Kayla's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. Once we leave this room, she said, others will see us. They will expect distance. They may question why we remained here together. Ethan nodded. Then we will tell them the truth. You were injured and needed support. Nothing more complicated than that. She hesitated, studying his expression. And if they notice the connection? Ethan raised his wrist slightly, showing the synced pulse. This does not have to be visible unless we choose to show it. Kayla exhaled slowly, relief mingling with uncertainty. You make everything sound so simple. It is simple, Ethan said softly. You are safe. I am here. That is enough for now. Another gentle hum vibrated under their feet as the stabilizers completed their cycle. The pod's hatch unlocked with a quiet click, leaving the final step in her hands. Kayla did not open it. Instead, she turned toward him fully, her gaze steady, her voice barely above a whisper. When the beam fell, I believed I would face the end alone. But then you lifted it, and for the first time, I felt someone reaching toward me instead of away. She paused, searching for the right words. It changed something. Ethan held her gaze without pressure, giving her space to decide how much to share. Kayla's pulse shimmered again, aligning instinctively with his. If I step out there, she continued softly, I will be expected to follow protocol. But inside this pod, I want to understand what this means. Ethan's reply came quietly, warm as the amber light settling around them. Then stay here a little longer. We move when you are ready. Kayla looked toward the still-closed hatch, then back at him. Her shoulders relaxed, the tension easing from her breath. Just a moment more, she whispered. And as the station steadied around them, she remained close, letting the quiet speak what words could not. The isolation pod remained warm and quiet, holding its breath with them as minutes passed in a soft, unhurried stillness. Kayla's eyes traced the sealed hatch as if measuring the distance between expectation and choice. The soft glow along her forearm pulsed in a slow rhythm, steadying each time her attention drifted back toward Ethan. Outside, muffled footsteps echoed down the corridor, distant and orderly. The crews were returning to check systems, unaware that inside the small amber-lit chamber, time had slowed for two people who were not ready to step back into protocol. Kayla finally spoke, her voice a gentle thread. If I walk out now, they will assume nothing unusual happened. They will place me under medical review, monitor my vitals, and ask me to confirm that I maintained full control of my responses. Her gaze lowered. But I did not. I did not control any of this. Ethan shifted slightly to face her. That does not mean something is wrong. Kayla looked up, her expression conflicted. For my people, losing control of an instinct is considered dangerous. We are taught to remain centered even in crisis. She paused. When the beam fell, I felt my focus fracture. And when you lifted it, the connection took hold before I could stop it. Ethan's tone remained soft. Maybe you were not meant to stop it. Kayla studied him, as though trying to understand how he spoke so easily about something she had spent her entire life being trained to avoid. You speak of instinct like it is something to be welcomed. Instinct keeps us alive, Ethan replied. It tells us who to trust. It tells us who we want near. A faint shiver crossed her shoulders, not from cold, but from being seen too clearly. Is that how humans live? She asked quietly. Trust first, explain later? He smiled gently. Something like that. The synced pulse flickered in brighter harmony, responding to the closeness of their voices. Kayla watched the glow with a mixture of wonder and hesitation. This reaction, it feels as if it is guiding me towards something. Ethan nodded. Then listen to it. A soft alert chimed from the hatch panel, signaling an incoming message. Kayla inhaled sharply. She recognized the tone. That is my team. They are checking compartments. They will expect a response. She reached toward the panel but stopped inches away, her fingers hovering. If I open the pod now, everything changes. Ethan kept his voice steady, grounding. What do you want to happen next? Kayla's breath slowed. The question lingered in the warm air, more important than any protocol waiting outside. She turned toward Ethan fully. I want to understand why being near you feels like clarity instead of confusion. She touched her chest lightly, just above where the synced pulse echoed beneath her skin. I want to know why my heartbeat follows yours when I have never allowed anyone that close. Her eyes softened, vulnerability opening like a quiet door. But I do not know how to explain this to anyone else. Ethan shook his head gently. You do not have to explain it yet. She held his gaze, the amber light catching the faint shimmer along her cheekbone. If we step out together, they will question everything. Then we step out slowly, Ethan replied. One moment at a time. Kayla's hand lowered from the panel. She drew in a steadying breath, her shoulders relaxing. If I stay here a little longer, she whispered, will the heartbeat remain calm? Ethan met her question with quiet certainty. As long as you are near, it will. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the truth of that settle through her. When she opened them again, the hesitancy in her expression had softened into something clearer. She stayed. The soft glow of the isolation pod dimmed to a gentle hush as the station outside settled into quiet recovery. Kayla remained beside Ethan, her posture calm yet alert, as if listening to a rhythm that only she could sense. The synced pulse shimmered faintly across her skin, responding to every shift in her breath, every steady beat of his heart. For a moment, the world beyond the pod felt distant, softened by the low hum of restored systems and the muted thrum of circulating air. Then a sound broke the stillness. A sharp, metallic chirp from the hatch panel. Kayla straightened immediately. That is not a standard systems check, she whispered. Someone is requesting direct access. Ethan rose slowly, placing himself just enough between her and the hatch to steady the space. Your team? He asked. Kayla shook her head. No. This signal belongs to the station coordinator. Her expression settled into something more composed, though tension tightened her shoulders. He will want an explanation for why I have not responded. The panel chirped again, this time with a softer undertone, signaling a message waiting for acknowledgement. Kayla hesitated, her hand hovering near the controls. If I open this, she murmured, everything we have kept inside this room becomes subject to protocol. Ethan kept his voice low and grounding. Then we control what we share. Kayla looked at him, searching his expression as if weighing the weight of those words. My people are meticulous. They analyze, measure, classify. If they sense something unusual in my vitals, they will investigate. Ethan lifted his wrist slightly, showing the pulse display. Is this something they can detect? Kayla studied it with thoughtful concern. Only if I am not careful. She drew a slow breath, gathering herself. I can mask the surface readings. It will take focus, but it is possible. Ethan nodded, trusting her. Then we do that. She glanced at him, her eyes softening despite the tension. You say that as if it is simple. Because with you? It is, he replied, warm and steady. Kayla exhaled a faint breath, touched by the ease in his tone. She stepped closer to the panel, placing her palm against the surface. The glow along her arm shifted, pulsing once before quieting into a controlled rhythm. The connection did not break, but softened, like a quiet heartbeat settling beneath layers of calm. The hatch interface blinked in response. A voice filtered through, muffled by the sealed door. Lieutenant Kayla Saren, this is Coordinator Halden. Systems have stabilized. Report your status. Kayla closed her eyes for a brief moment, centering herself. When she answered, her voice was composed but gentle. I sustained minor injuries during the impact. Engineer Ethan Cole assisted in my recovery. We remained in isolation until the area was deemed safe. There was a pause, followed by Halden's reply. Understood. Medical staff is on standby. Are you prepared to exit the pod? Kayla's gaze shifted to Ethan, not for permission, but for reassurance. The pulse on his wrist shimmered quietly, steady as her breath. Ethan gave her a small nod. Whenever you are ready. She turned back to the panel. Her voice did not waver. Opening now. But her hand remained still. She looked at Ethan one last time, the soft light catching the quiet certainty in her eyes. Stay close, she whispered. Not an order. Not a request. A truth she was finally allowing herself to speak. Ethan stepped beside her, close enough for their breaths to share the same air. I am not going anywhere. With that, Kayla pressed her palm to the panel, and the hatch began to open, slow and bright, as the world waited on the other side. The hatch eased open with a gentle hiss, allowing a band of cool white light to spill into the isolation pod. Kayla blinked once as the brighter corridor light reached her eyes, but she did not step forward. Not yet. Ethan stayed beside her, close enough that she could sense his presence without needing to look. The synced pulse on his wrist dimmed to a faint glow, quiet but unmistakably steady. Coordinator Halden waited just outside, his posture composed and professional. His gaze moved briefly to Ethan before returning to Kayla with respectful formality. Lieutenant Saren, we are relieved you were not seriously harmed. Medical staff is prepared to complete your evaluation. Kayla inclined her head. I appreciate the concern. I will comply with the evaluation once I have verified the stability of this corridor. It was a graceful diversion, delivered with the calm authority expected from her station. Halden nodded, accepting her wording without suspicion. Of course, we have also registered an unusual energy fluctuation during the structural event. Your report will be important in assessing its cause. Kayla's breath tightened for half a second. She masked it with a smooth inhale. I will provide the necessary information. Halden glanced at Ethan. Engineer Cole, thank you for assisting her during the incident. Ethan offered a modest nod. Just doing my part. Halden seemed satisfied. When the lieutenant is ready, accompany her to the med bay. A full diagnostic is standard. He stepped aside, giving them room to exit. Kayla remained still until his footsteps faded down the hall. Only then did she release a quiet breath, turning slightly toward Ethan. He noticed the energy fluctuation, she murmured. Not the cause, but the effect. Ethan kept his voice soft. Can he trace it to you? Kayla shook her head. Not unless the connection grows stronger. That is why I must maintain control. She stepped into the corridor, but her pace was slow, almost cautious. The ambient lights reflected softly off her skin, revealing the faint internal glow that had not fully faded. Ethan walked beside her, careful not to shadow her, but close enough to match her stride. As they moved through the hall, crew members looked up from their consoles, acknowledging her with respectful nods. No one questioned the presence of a human engineer walking at her side, but Kayla could sense the quiet curiosity behind their glances. She kept her expression neutral, her breathing measured. The medbay door appeared ahead, its glass panel gleaming with a soft blue symbol indicating active diagnostics. Kayla paused just before reaching it. Inside that room, she said quietly, they will scan for irregularities in my neural patterns. If they detect anything unusual, they will ask questions I cannot answer. Ethan angled himself slightly toward her. What do you need from me? Kayla lowered her gaze for a moment, gathering the right words. Your presence helped stabilize the connection. I believe, if you remain near, I can keep it from overwhelming the scans. Ethan nodded, steady as ever. Then I stay near. She looked up at him, and for the first time since leaving the pod, a small but unmistakable relief softened her features. The synced pulse shimmered faintly on his wrist, responding to that subtle shift. Kayla drew a slow breath and faced the medbay door. There is something else, she said softly. If the scans detect this rhythm, they may assume I formed a bond. And bonds, among my people, are not casual. They hold meaning. Ethan held her gaze. What meaning? Kayla's voice dropped to a fragile whisper. A bond is rare. It is instinct choosing for us. It is not something we can undo. The corridor hummed quietly around them, the lights reflecting gently off the polished floor. Ethan's eyes stayed warm and steady, grounding her. And in that thin breath of silence, The truth settled between them. The connection was not fading. It was growing clearer. The medbay door slid open with a muted whisper, releasing a faint breath of sterilized air and soft white light. Kayla paused on the threshold, her pulse shimmering subtly beneath her skin, the rhythm still echoing gently across Ethan's wrist display. The room beyond was calm and quiet, humming with active scanners and softly blinking instruments, each one ready to measure, record, and classify every detail of her physiology. She stepped inside with practiced composure, but Ethan sensed the tension in the way her shoulders lifted ever so slightly as the door closed behind them. A medical attendant greeted her respectfully, guiding her toward a diagnostic platform. "Lieutenant Saren, please place your hand on the panel. The scan will monitor neural alignment and internal resonance." Kayla nodded, her voice even. "I understand." Ethan remained a step behind, close enough for her to feel him, far enough not to interfere. The synced heartbeat softened in response, flattening into a calm, steady glow. Kayla placed her hand on the panel. A soft ring of light expanded beneath her palm, rising like a halo around her wrist. The attendant watched the readings without suspicion. "Your vitals appear stable," he said. "We will run a deeper resonance check." A deeper check, the kind that would detect any unusual internal signal. Kayla inhaled slowly, lowering her gaze. The glow beneath her skin responded, flickering once before dimming. She focused, drawing her breath through a steady rhythm, and the synced pulse softened again, quiet but intact. Ethan watched her hold the connection with remarkable control, neither rejecting it nor allowing it to flare. The attendant adjusted a monitor. "There is a slight anomaly in your harmonic patterns, Lieutenant, but nothing outside acceptable parameters. Likely a response to the structural impact." Kayla held her posture. "The incident was stressful. I anticipated some deviation." He nodded, satisfied. "It should resolve naturally." The words eased the tension in the room, but Kayla did not look relieved. Not yet. When the final scan completed, the attendant bowed respectfully. "You are cleared. Please report to the coordinator when convenient." Kayla thanked him with a composed nod, then stepped away from the platform and moved toward Ethan with quiet, measured steps. Only when the medbay door eased shut behind them did she let her breath slip out, softer than a whisper. "It listened to me," she murmured. The connection obeyed. Ethan angled toward her. "You controlled it." Kayla shook her head gently. "No, I guided it. There is a difference." They walked down the corridor slowly, their footsteps echoing in gentle sync. Kayla touched her chest lightly, as if feeling for the rhythm inside. A bond that can be guided is not a mistake. It is intention. She looked up at him then, truly looked, with nothing shielded. Her voice softened into something almost fragile. "Ethan, my people do not form bonds lightly. When it happens, it is considered a turning point in a person's life. It means they have found someone whose presence alters their rhythm, someone their instincts choose without permission." Ethan felt his own heartbeat answer, steady and warm. "And what does it mean for you?" Kayla stepped closer, close enough that the corridor lights reflected in her eyes. "It means my instinct chose you." The synced pulse shimmered brightly across his wrist, glowing with quiet certainty, and for the first time since the connection began, Kayla did not try to hide it. She let it shine. She let it speak. She let it be true. And in the gentle hum of the corridor, with the station restored around them, she remained beside him in complete, peaceful silence, because the rhythm between them needed no words at all.